Good morning, YouTube. Welcome once again to another edition of my bookshelf tour, and I'm here on the second shelf, part three. The first book I have is Shelley's Selected Poems. Uh, this is it has a lot of Shelley's poems. I'm not too much of a fan of poetry, but because Shelley has been uh, praised so much by several people, including Bertrand Russell, who is one of my favorite authors. So I thought of getting a book on Shelley. The next book is Adventures in Criticism by Amal Kiran, K.D. Setna. Amal Kiran is one of my favorite authors. He was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo, and he has written around 40 to 50 books. I have many of them, several of them, and I love his language, the way he writes, especially when he's writing criticism, literary criticism, especially poetry. And related to Shelley, Amal Kiran has written about you know he's praised Shelley as one of the best poets ever. So one of the reasons why I have Shelley is also because of Amal Kiran, because of um, his admiration for Shelley. The third book I have is Salman Rushdie's famous work Fury. It's a novel about uh, a professor who is uh, who has run away from his family in England to live in America, but who gets involved in several other affairs, and finally, through all of it, goes back to his family. So it's a kind of it's an autobiographical novel. It's perhaps the most autobiographical of all of Rushdie's novels. This he has mentioned himself in his latest work, Languages of Truth. Okay, and the next one is a very renowned book called The Organization Man by William White. I haven't read it entirely, but it came out in the 60s, and it talks about how human beings have become transformed into a cog in a machine, in the organization machine. So it promises to be a very interesting book. Another book is Contemporary Sociological Theories by Petrim Sorokin, one of the famous sociologists. And this is not a book that I've read actually, though I know a lot about Petrim Sorokin. Then I have a book is this book is Philosophy of Science by Geoffrey Gorham, Beginner's Guide series, and it's a wonderful book actually. I found it to be extremely informative about philosophy of science and very well written. I have a great interest in scientific thought, scientific methodology, in philosophy of science more than factual science. And then there's this work called Varieties of Stabilization Experience. It has a strange name, but it's actually a book of economics, and this is by Lance Taylor, and it comes in the Wider Studies in Development Economics. It's a Clarendon paperback. Now this title comes from another book of great repute, Varieties of Religious Experience, and Lance Taylor actually mentions in the opening pages that he has taken this name from that William James classic. But here he is talking about how when a country goes through an economic crisis, especially developing world countries, the kind of package that IMF and World Bank prescribe them, what are the consequences when these developing countries adopt those measures prescribed by IMF. And it's those experiences from Nicaragua to India to several other countries, Philippines, Colombia, all these countries. There's a lot of statistics also inside. So it's a good, interesting work on economics. Then I have this novel by Richard Bach, Hypnotizing Maria. This novel is a famous work by Richard Bach, the famous author of Richard Jonathan Livingstone Seagull, perhaps the most famous New Age book. And this has a similar theme. It's not that interesting. It's about how we have hypnotized ourselves to believe in our limitations. That's a familiar New Age theme, and which doesn't have much purchase for me. But anyway, it's a racy read, and if you are interested in New Age theories, then perhaps you will love it. But I'm past that whole New Age enchantment. Then there is another work by Eric Berne, who was the famous transactional therapist, one of the most famous books. And this is pretty interesting. The human relationships has been analyzed by Berne in terms of psychological give and take, what he calls strokes. And it's a very interesting theoretical work, actually. Then I have Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. Kazuo Ishiguro, the famous Nobel Prize winning author. And this is not one of the books that I like, even though this is the most famous one. And then I have The Ascent of Money, one of the famous works on financial history, and a book called Being Ethical by S. Manicutti, which is a book on business ethics. So that's all in today's edition of my bookshelf tour. See you next time.